adaptive moving average, accelerator oscillator, a rune, balance of power, Chaikin money flow, Chande momentum, Kopic curve, detrended price oscillator. I could keep going. In fact, I will. There are 117 of these in our catalog alone. 117 named technical indicators, each with its own formula, its own folklore, its own true believers. Here's the question the trading education business rarely asks. How many of these are actually different? Because if the answer is not many, and it isn't, then most of technical analysis is the same 3 or 4 ideas wearing 117 costumes. I'm Janet. This is video 31 of 50. Before we can have a rigorous debate about technical analysis, we have to thin the herd. So let's count, and then let's cluster. Where do 117 indicators come from? Mostly from small variations on a few moves. You take a price series, you can smooth it, that's a moving average, and there are a dozen ways to smooth. Simple, exponential, weighted, Hull, Kaufman adaptive, McGinley, on and on. You can measure how fast it's moving, that's momentum, and rate of change, and the relative strength index, and the stochastic. You can measure how much it's spreading, volatility, bands, average true range, or how much volume agrees with the move. Smooth, speed, spread, volume. 4 ideas. Almost every one of the 117 is one of those 4, parameterized differently or combined. The catalog isn't 117 discoveries, it's 4 ideas and a naming committee. So let's cluster them. Put 2 indicators near each other when they tell you the same thing, when their signals fire on the same bars. Watch what happens. 117 points collapse into a handful of dense clumps. The moving averages pile on top of each other. Of course they do. They're all averages of the same closes. The oscillators clump, the bands clump. Whole regions of the catalog are, statistically, near duplicates. These clumps are equivalence classes. Inside a class, the choice between indicators is cosmetic, taste, habit, what your charting platform defaulted to. The interesting variation is between classes, not within them. And there are far fewer classes than there are names. This is also exactly how an indicator salesman hides. Stack 6 members of the same class on your chart, watch them all turn green together, and call it confirmation. It isn't. 6 readings of the same underlying average agreeing is 1 signal wearing 6 hats, not 6 independent witnesses. A statistically stronger reading comes from different classes agreeing. A trend reading and a volume reading and a volatility reading, each derived from a different feature of the data, all pointing the same way. That's confluence, which makes the joint claim worth evaluating, not a reason to act. 6 moving averages nodding at each other is just an echo. Here's the picture I keep in my head. A Poincaré disk, a hyperbolic plane. Out at the rim, the tiles get smaller and smaller, and there are infinitely many of them. That's the indicator catalog. You can always invent one more. Tweak a parameter, combine 2 oscillators, give it your initials. The rim never fills up. But every one of those tiles is organized by a few centers near the middle. Infinite names, finite structure. That's technical analysis. The supply of indicators is unbounded. The supply of independent signals is small. Adding your 118th indicator doesn't add information. It adds a tile at the rim. So how do we treat indicators without drowning in them? We make them uniform. In the analyzing extension, an indicator isn't a special snowflake. It's an aggregator, a tiny spec with a name, a kind, and a function that emits SQL. The SQL runs against 10 years of bars sitting in a columnar file. No per indicator code path, no 117 special cases. And there are exactly 3 kinds, because there are exactly 3 shapes an indicator result can take. Overlay, a line per symbol, drawn on the chart. Matrix, a number per pair of symbols, drawn as a correlation heat map. Surface, a number per symbol per time, drawn as a 3-dimensional surface. 3 kinds cover the whole bestiary. And notice, the registry ships with exactly 1 indicator seeded, on purpose. We don't pre-populate 117. We add the one we can justify, in a shape that makes the next one additive instead of special. That restraint is the whole philosophy in miniature. The catalog on disk, 117 reference cards, is documentation, not implementation. The implementation earns each indicator one at a time, each as the same three-field spec, each emitting SQL that runs against the same columnar bars. No special cases means no place for a sloppy indicator to hide. If it can't be expressed as a clean aggregator over the canonical bar schema, that's a signal it wasn't well defined in the first place. The uniform shape is a filter. The surface kind is where this stops being about one chart. Take a single indicator, say momentum, and compute it across every symbol in a sector, over time. Now you have a surface, symbols on one axis, time on the other, the signal as height. One indicator, a whole sector, at a glance. The ridge that runs across the surface is the sector rotating. That's a question worth asking, and you can only ask it once you've stopped treating each indicator as a precious individual and started treating the catalog as a small set of operators you can point at any basket. One last move, and it's the bridge to everything else on this channel. An indicator by itself is cosmetic, a line on a chart you nod at. But RSI above 70 can be promoted. It can become a predicate, a yes or no question with a declared window and a citation, the kind of thing the accounting kernel checks. The momentum framework does exactly this. It takes the indicators that survived the cull and phrases each one as a prop. That's the difference between an indicator you believe and a signal you can check. And once it's a predicate, it inherits everything the kernel gives you. It composes with other predicates. It carries a citation. It propagates an uncertainty. A momentum reading and a trend reading become two axioms the kernel can require together, confluence, but provable, instead of three green lights and a hunch. The bestiary stops being a wall of charts and becomes a vocabulary of claims, which raises the obvious question. If we're going to prove things about indicators, we'd better compute them correctly. And that's harder than it sounds, even for an indicator as famous as MACD. So here's the only question that matters, and it's the one this whole topic is named for. Which of these 117 is a real signal, and which is a tile at the rim? You don't answer that by adding indicators. You answer it by counting classes, demanding parity, and proving things about the survivors. Fewer, grounded, checkable. That's the debate worth having. Next video, we take the most famous indicator of them all, MACD, and find the bug that's been hiding in plain sight for 40 years, the one where the textbook formula and the reference implementation quietly disagree. The catalog's at github.com/Quantapix. See you in 4.2.